Hi there. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is Introduction to U11 through the OWFL, introducing the game of women's field lacrosse, specifically the U11 level, and that we'll be playing with all those rules modifications for the 2025 season. If you're joining us on the call, thank you. And if you're joining us as a recording, watching the recording later, welcome. We'll start with our landing support acknowledgement. At this time, we would like to give thanks to the creator for giving us the game of lacrosse. Lacrosse is medicine to the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse, and we like to thank them for sharing this medicine with the world. We would also like to give thanks to all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as we all sit in their territories. We say thank you to the creator for giving us Mother Earth. She then gave us the tree that our sticks are made from. This is the true roots of the medicine we call lacrosse today. Thank you. My name is Hannah. I am the OWFL Director of Officiating, and I am going to be taking you through the course tonight with a lens through the rules, so the officiating stuff will definitely come into play. But I'm also a former coach and former women's lacrosse athlete myself, and so hopefully those contexts can also come into play in the call tonight as well. I started playing in my high school days. Didn't start till I was 14, and then went to play right through university at Wilfrid Laurier University. I've been the OWFL Director of Officiating since 2022, and I'm also an internationally rated official. So you might see me doing some of maybe the older kids games this summer. I just finished my 4th World Cup this past summer in Hong Kong. I'm a member of the World Lacrosse Rules Committee, and my personal officiating motto when it comes to the admin side of things is that no rule is a secret. So I'm really dedicated to creating resources that are hopefully going to help foster a better understanding of our game, particularly in the OWFL. And as the OIC, or the official in charge of Lacrosse Canada, across Canada. So very proud of the work that we're doing there to try and grow the game. And I'm a huge film nerd, hence the film nerd photo on the right of me in my childhood. We always try and do this in our clinics. Tonight, our learning outcomes are as follows. I really want to contextualize the game of women's field lacrosse and our sport's unique history. I want to provide a brief overview of the OWFL and our programs. I'd like to introduce U11, including the modifications that are going to be specific to this level. I'd like to build avenues for spectators and coaches to inform themselves and contribute to a positive environment for our athletes and officials on field. And I'd like to foster an appreciation for this phenomenal game, particularly if you're new to U11 and this is your first time kind of trying to understand maybe what you've been seeing at tryouts or trying to get some more context. It really is a fantastic game and a really interesting time to be coming into the sport. So all are welcome, and hopefully you can learn something tonight. An all too compact history of our game. So we started with our land acknowledgement. Indigenous culture and community are the absolute foundation of the game of lacrosse in all of its forms, be it men's field, box, sixes, women's. Lacrosse is an Indigenous game. It is considered to be a gift from the creator to the Haudenosaunee people, and the Haudenosaunee people are represented within the OWFL across a number of teams, which is really exciting for us. In the 2000s, the women's field game was still arguably maybe the closest version to the original creators game. We didn't play with any lined boundaries until 2005, and players still wear limited equipment to this day. Women's field as a discipline appeared in Scotland in the 1800s and had changed quite a lot since then. It was popularized in Canada in the 1980s, and there's an official who is a former member of the original Canadian National Women's Program, which competed at the first World Championship, and they got bronze. Really cool to still have her as an official. And the OWFL athletes have the opportunity to compete on the international stage, either for Team Canada or for Team Haudenosaunee. We've also had OWFL athletes go on to represent other countries too, which is really exciting. And thinking forward, where history is taking us, lacrosse, the sixes version of our game, including for the women, is Olympic bound in 2028. So really exciting stuff. I'll just mention before I go any further that if you are taking a look at this recording after the fact, I'm going to be sharing this along with a slide deck on the presentation. And in the notes section are a whole bunch of extra content. So for this one, I've got a video linked to Lacrosse Canada, more about the history of the game, and the PLL put together a kind of really cool video about the history of the game, skews to the men's side, but still pretty interesting. So if you are going through this presentation on your own time, please feel free to check out the slide deck. And if you're looking for more context, the notes section in the presenter view of the presentation will have more at the bottom. Women's lacrosse, though, it's our own thing. Women's field is a unique sport. The people who have been involved in this game for a while and the athletes in our game will tell you that, generally speaking, they don't want to wear more equipment. They don't want to use different sticks. We have unique skills. We have unique skills because of the way our game is developed. And we are really excited and proud about that. Our sticks are different. They have shallow pockets. We'll get into a little bit more about the equipment in a bit, but the game is fast paced. It's highly skilled. And while if you're new to the game, you might be like, all right, what am I getting myself into? I would say that it's most akin to basketball, but the rules application is very similar to basketball and soccer combined, which is kind of wild. And we'll get into that. And while there's definitely room for change, generally speaking, we like it this way. There's been more of an influence of the other three sectors, that being men's field, box lacrosse, and sixes, on our game as we progress forward. And as all four sectors kind of get a little bit closer together. But I really enjoy working in the women's field game because of its uniqueness. What does the OWFL do? Well, the Ontario Women's Field Lacrosse Organization, for our mandate is to provide opportunities for girls and women of all ages to participate in women's field lacrosse in the province of Ontario. We currently are responsible for running all rep women's field programming, where local clubs can compete against each other, and we have provincial championships at all of our levels, U9 through our Jewel under U19 elite program. We're also responsible for organizing the women's lacrosse component of the Ontario Summer Games. The last Summer Games was held in 2024 in London, Ontario, and the 2026, I haven't actually heard about the location, but that's usually a U17 tournament, which is always super, super fun to be a part of. Great opportunity for these athletes. And what is our role as officials? So within women's field lacrosse, fouls occur frequently throughout the game, both on and off ball. Some fouls result in quick stoppages of play, where the player who was fouled may restart on their own time and of their own volition. And other fouls require officials to step in, be a little bit more hands-on, and set the foul in a specific position on the field, or move the ball or the offending player to a specific position on the field. Really dangerous and unsportsmanlike play results in stoppages of the clock and cards being awarded, like in soccer, to the offending player. Officials therefore play an important role in managing play to keep players safe, keep the game fair, and to allow players to play to their greatest potential. That's always our ultimate goal. And who are the OWFL officials that will be on your games this summer? So just to give any parents taking a look at this an idea of who to anticipate, generally we have between 70 and 100 officials register. And lately we're up to like 30 new officials registering every year, which is really exciting. But it's tough for that group because they also tend to be 14-year-old girls. Not to say they can't handle it. We have some absolute studs, but it is a really challenging age to get into officiating. There's a lot of pressure. It's a very loud environment, particularly these guys start on our U9 and U11 games, and probably our most excited group of parents are our U9 and U11 parents. But there's generally between 70 and 100 officials that work across many, many games over the summer. But for over 40% of those officials are under the age of 18, so they're kids. And many of them are active players in the league. And I get lots of people being like, can we get into this? Absolutely. The information about that is always available on the website, owfl.org/officials. But 25% of our officials are college age. A number of officials who have gone down to the NCAA as players come back in the summer, and their summer job is officiating. Really great once you get to be out of high school, the amount of games you have access to completely opens up. And many of them play in the NCAA, as I mentioned, or in the OUA, the Ontario University League. About 30% of our officials are adults over 23, so not a majority of officials are adults. And we're a predominantly female group. Last year, we only had 3 officials that were guys, or identified that way, and we're very proud to be, generally speaking, a highly predominantly female group. Throughout the summer, you're going to see some more senior level officials, we call them our mentors, posted up at the scorekeepers table, providing feedback to the officials that are going to be on U11 games. This mentorship program is something that the league has really invested in. We're very proud of, and we feel that it's really added to the learning and development of our officials coming up through the ranks. Mentors are experienced officials tasked with providing feedback to the on-field group, but to also liaise with coaches. So we're there to answer coaches' questions and provide their feedback in a responsible way to the officials on the field, so that those young officials who are in their first couple of years of officiating and doing a lot of U9, U11 can just focus on the game in front of them. Once you get up to under 15 and under 19 in Jewel, then we don't have any mentor sitting at the table. It's all about evaluating, and those officials have rubrics and those types of things that they're evaluated against. That's all I'll say about officiating. We will get very into the rules tonight so that people have an idea before the season starts of what to anticipate and what to expect. But explaining this game can sometimes make me feel like Charlie Day in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Trying to connect the dots. But the women's field lacrosse game within the context of World Lacrosse, Lacrosse Canada, USA Lacrosse, international competition, Athletes Unlimited, the WLL, there's so many new aspects to this game that sometimes you just are like, why? And it might seem a little bit overly complicated. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of context as to like where we're going with the game tonight, and help you situate your kid who's going to be playing U11 this summer within that broader context. So, as I mentioned, there are a whole bunch of different avenues by which we have to govern ourselves. So, our rule book and the rules that we play by in the OWFL start way up at the tip top at World Lacrosse. They are the ones who are responsible with writing our rule book, and I sit on that rules committee, which is a pretty cool opportunity. Lacrosse Canada then feeds in. So if Lacrosse Canada decided, no, in Canada, we're going to do things this way, they would then make some modifications to the rulebook. In the current iteration, there are no modifications at the Lacrosse Canada level. So then that takes us down to Ontario at the provincial level, and the OWFL representing the OLA. In the OWFL, we have implemented development-oriented rules and modifications to make the game more accessible to younger, less skilled, new athletes, in the hopes that they might kind of like it with a little bit less pressure, a little bit less contact, and then they can grow up with the game as they get into playing the real rules of lacrosse at U13 and above. Still with fewer and fewer modifications as you age up through the OWFL. Things get a little bit complicated when our athletes tend to, if they ever play on travel teams or if your OWFL program ever goes down to the US to play. And parents find it really frustrating, athletes find it frustrating, because in the US, they use a completely different rule set. So they'll have different rules at youth lacrosse levels, at tournaments, they'll have specific rules for that tournament. US high school has its own rule book. The NCAA has its own rule book. So if you're watching NCAA games online, you'd be like, what is this green card? Not something we have in international lacrosse. And then there's also the pro level. So unfortunately, we lost Athletes Unlimited, but we have gained the WLL, which is a sixes women's only version of the game. So lots of different versions of women's field lacrosse, lots of different rule sets. We in Ontario are using mostly that World Lacrosse rulebook and then filtering it down with some modifications. And so what does the field look like? It's probably a good place to start. In the OWFL, U9 and U11 games are played on a small condensed field. So we take the field that you would use at an international version of the game, and we cut out basically all of the midfield space so that the athletes and their tiny little legs don't have to run as far up and down the field. It's 74 meters. It's 4 meters longer than it was in past years to accommodate the fact that the field lines have changed again. If you've been around for a couple of seasons, previously we'd only been playing with that big semicircle, and it was actually smaller to match the smaller size U9, U11 field. We have a rules committee in Ontario formed of coaches at the U9, U11 level feeding into rules. And ultimately we decided that we wanted more consistency from U9 through U11 and up. So the U11s are going to be using the same marking area that same designed fan space that we'll get into a little bit, as the older groups, and it's the same size this year. And so we need to make the field just a little bit bigger, 2 meters in each end, just to accommodate this space. But this is the field, the 74 meter by 36 meter field for U11. A full field is 100 meters by 60 meters, and that's the one that the athletes start to use in U13 and above. We don't have to get into too much on this, but in here, the number in brackets aligns to the number in the diagram. We have our boundaries, which are the 4 outside lines that contain the field. Those are in black. We have a shared substitution area in U9 and U11. So if an athlete's exiting in one side of the box, as soon as both feet are off the field, a teammate can enter back onto the field on either side of the center line. Immediately. We sub on the fly in women's field lacrosse. You can sub after goals, but all substitutions take place at the center in a shared sub box, like in the other sectors, like men's field and sixes. But you don't have to tap sticks. You don't have to high five as you go off. If you want to go in at one end or off the field at one end, your teammate can exit back onto the field at the other end. It's kind of a cool way to gain up to, a 13-meter advantage, because that's how big that substitution area is. We do have a center circle, a center circle, and around that we do our draw. We'll get into this a little bit, but in U11, we only do draws at the start of every quarter. And then otherwise, goalies are just going to clear the ball out of the net after they get scored on. And the center line is our restraining line in U11. So the restraining line, it's this big line going right down the center of the field that intersects the center circle. It is for managing offsides. And in the bigger field, if we go back, there's 2 restraining lines. There's one towards either end of the field. But in U9, U11, we've condensed. And so the U11 field just has that one at the middle. And then when we get into the goal area, we have these dots. These are for penalty administration. Any foul that occurs in the bottom half of in the bottom, 5th of the field here, that's going to get set up on the nearest dot. And same thing, you go to your nearest dot. So any foul in this area beneath the goal line extended, this big goal line extended, that is going to get set up on the nearest dot. And then we can get into our fans and our marking areas a little bit. Before I move into that, I just want to flag this red dotted line. That isn't a mistake. It's genuinely part of the field lining. It's something that we wanted to introduce in 2024, but it didn't necessarily work out with our field painting. So something we're really pushing for in 2025 is to make sure that this parent line is on the field. So if you're a spectator and you're at the U11 field this summer, my ask is that you take 4 big steps off the field to give the athletes on the field and the officials on the field a little bit of breathing space. Because they're small, people are on the sidelines. You're supposed to only be on the opposite side of the benches, and we ask you to be 4 big steps off of that sideline so that everyone's just got a little bit of breathing room, athletes included. As I mentioned, or kind of alluded to, U11 is a very loud space with a lot of very excited people watching their kids play. That's awesome. We want to encourage that, but we really do need a little bit of space to be able to back out of bounds, run and give the players space. And if anything was happening on the sideline, we want the players to not fall into anybody sitting immediately next to the field. So that's that red dotted line. That's the parent line. Hopefully this summer it's much more clearly marked than it's been in last year. So let's look in detail at these scoring areas. In the US, they're called the critical scoring area. We call it the advantage flag area. And within that are 3 distinct spaces. So this diagram 7 is taken directly from the rule book. Last year, all we were using was the 15-meter marking area. It's the big green semicircle. But World Lacrosse decided to go back to what the field lines look like in the NCAA and in US high school and what we used to use in World Lacrosse. They seem a little bit more complicated. Going back to having multiple fans, multiple marking areas definitely creates a little bit more confusion around penalty administration. But for the most part, any minor fouls, those are kind of like tic-tac fouls that we'll get into. They're going to get set up along the big semicircle in here. Then we have our marking area. So any more serious major fouls that occur within this space those are going to result in what we call a free position. And that's where the ball is going to get moved to the nearest hash mark. The defenders are given the adjacent hash marks. Everybody clears out of this entire blue space. So you don't have anybody standing within these little triangular spaces here. Everyone clears out of the entire blue area. And we're going to restart play with a whistle. And it's our equivalent of like a free throw in basketball. It's not a free shot because the defense is live at the whistle, but it's an advantage to the attacking team because they were fouled against. And then finally, the 11-meter fan is specifically this fan shape right in the middle of the marking areas. And the fan is specific to our 3 seconds rule, very similar to 3 in the key in basketball. And we'll come back to that towards the end of the call when we get into our major fouls. So stay tuned for more on the 11-meter fan towards the end of the call. The hash marks are also named. So starting at center hash, it's center, first, second, third. This is the hash along the goal line extended. No fouls get set up on that space. It's solely to make sure that people get out of the fan. Goal circle violations against the defensive team, they get set up here on the corners. We call this the corner, along the 15s. And that's the names. A lot of people don't really know what these things are called. We find in U11, if you're a coach on this call, it's really helpful if your athletes are aware of what the field lines are called so that your officials can be like, all right, Susie, 17 blue, center hash, 14, 4 meters behind, and we can kind of use those verbal cues to get the penalty administration going a little bit quicker in your game. Corner, it's not an official name, it's just kind of something we use to refer to this space. Hanging hash is what we used to call the third hash, but we're trying to get our officials to be consistent about saying third hash. And then that goal line extended hash mark, that's this one right here. And then finally, this is the advantage flag area. So the advantage flag area is important for 2 reasons. Officials may use their flag. You'll see them wearing a yellow flag tucked into their shirt or into their pants or their skirt or whatever they're wearing. Officials are allowed to flag certain fouls that occur in this blue space. And in U9 and U11, players are only permitted to make contact against the ball carrier when they're inside this zone. So long as they don't foul, if the contact is legal in real lacrosse, it's legal in this space. Defenders may only crash on body. So that's like somebody's driving to the goal. Usually in our game, somebody will yell crash, and that's a signal to all the defensive players to turn and try and stop the ball from going towards the goal. They'll like lead with their sticks, try and get on the body, or try and get their sticks in the way of a shot on goal. So those are the 2 reasons why this area is important for U11. New officials, to the first point, are expected to wear their flags, but we don't teach them exactly how to apply this until a later clinic in the season. And really until the next level. And it's all about delayed penalties. So we try to not overcomplicate things for our new officials. If you do see it, it's just like in hockey when a referee puts their hand up in the air to identify that they've seen a foul, or they've identified a penalty and they're going to send somebody to the box. The flag going up is that same thing. It's a held penalty. We hold it until the end of the scoring play. For now, we'll come back to that bit about contact in this space, but it's important to understand what this area is called. The AFA, the advantage flag area, is something we refer to a lot in women's field lacrosse, and that it's composed of these 3 spaces, of the 15-meter marking area, the space up top, the semicircle, of the goal circle, and of the third area, that's the advantage flag area below the goal line extended, that long, flat goal line right through the middle. And just again, identifying that parent line. But why? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we do it differently at U11? Why does the US do things differently? Why can't we seem to keep rules consistent? Why do they keep changing every couple of years? I really believe that this sport is just growing. It's still finding its identity and growing massively on the world stage. I think we're really close to what the final version of women's field lacrosse is going to look like, but there's definitely some growing pains, particularly post-pandemic. We understand that these can be a little alienating for families new to the sport, but we just ask you to bear with us. This is a really phenomenal game. And hopefully your kids feel that throughout the end of the summer. And despite being Indigenous in origin, women's field lacrosse has this steep tradition of being British, very prim and proper rules. And now our sport really isn't that at all. At the world lacrosse level, we're making strides to simplify the rules, to consolidate them amongst those four major disciplines of the game, and to make the game more spectator friendly, while bearing player safety in mind. So that's kind of the context. But this game's really awesome. And so let's get into the absolute details, the stuff that you're probably a little more excited about on this call tonight. So in real lacrosse, all of those things that we would typically anticipate with real lacrosse being, that's the version we're going to play in Jewel or at a World Cup, using that World Lacrosse rulebook. Those can all be found on the left here. And on the right is how we modify it or how things are the same, broadly speaking, for U11. So, and here's my opportunity to identify that, yes, this is a rule change year. So we've already talked a little bit about how the fan has gone back to what it used to be. A lot of rule changes, some that we as a rules committee in the OWFL, along with that coaching group, we decided were important to adjust and to implement, and 27 of them made at the world lacrosse level. So lots of rule changes. And the first really exciting one for U11 is that U11 for the first time is going to be using a hard yellow rubber ball. Traditionally, they've used a soft pink ball in U11, and then we also use that in U9. But this is going to be the first season that our U11s have proven that they have gotten to the point that they're skilled enough to play with that ball and to play with it safely. So U11 will be using a hard yellow ball, just like real lacrosse. U11 is going to be 4 quarters of 10 minutes each versus the 15 that we'll see at Jewel. And we are going to do draws which are not on the ground like they do in men's field or in box. We do ours just above hip level in the air. We're going to do those draws at the start of each quarter. And then goalies are going to clear the ball after each goal. We do that. It's kind of taken from this. It is taken from the sixes game. And we do that because we want our U11 athletes to get as many touches on the ball as possible. We play 7v7 in U11. So that's 4 attackers versus 4 defenders plus the goalie. The goalkeeper is mandatory on the field in U11. You cannot play without a goalkeeper, and goalie being defined by the one wearing that equipment that we'll get into. And then we hold 2 players above the restraining line or behind the restraining line. And those 2 players keep your team onside or offside. And then how we play attack and defense, if you're looking for something to compare it to, very similar to basketball. Basketball players coming in are going to be very strong. And actually, there's a couple of clubs that have a ton of kids that play basketball, and then they all play together in the same lacrosse team, and they tend to be very dominant defensive teams because their defensive skills are just so strong. But person-to-person defense is probably what you're going to see most often in U11. You can run a zone, although most U11 teams aren't going to do that. You could run a backer defense, and that's kind of a zone with a defender playing behind the ball. But again, the most common thing you'll see in U11 is person-to-person defense. And just like in basketball, they have the key. We have the 11-meter fan in that scoring area inside that we need defense to basically be marked up within and actively guarding an opponent. Otherwise, it's a foul. Equipment. So before you step on the field, what do you need to wear to be legally dressed? You have to play with a stick. It's not possible to be on the field if you're not holding a legal stick. If you don't know where to start with these sticks, there's a number of common brands. I'm going to say Gate is the most popular by a mile, just numerically speaking amongst our athletes. It also is the most expensive. So there are lots of affordable options for new families to the game. Maybe when you joined your club, there might have been a stick given to you at registration. If you came from House League, sometimes that's the case. But look for common brands, Gate, STX, Brine, String King, there's many more. Always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about legal sticks, if your coaches don't have the answers for you. As a board member, I'm very happy to help direct people to local vendors or stores in their area that might be able to sell them legal equipment for women's field lacrosse. Pocket depth on a women's field stick is more shallow than on a box or a men's field stick. So we are using sticks specific to women's field lacrosse in our game at all levels. You cannot use a box stick and you cannot use a men's field lacrosse stick. And we'll look at the difference in those kind of broadly. Players have to wear a mouth guard. It has to cover all of your top teeth. In a past years, it couldn't be white or clear, but that is the dumbest rule ever. So that's fine now, so long as it's a mouth guard and it's going to protect you if you kind of collapse and your teeth bang against each other. That mouth guard is mandatory. It has to be on the teeth at all times. The OLA last year also started mandating goggles. And again, if you take a look at the slide deck, you can click that white link there and it'll take you to the OLA press release. There's specific photos of what goggles look like, and there's specific photos of what sport goggles will accept on the field if your athlete wears sport goggles. We recommend running shoes, turf shoes, cleats, no metal bottoms on the cleats, please, depending on the playing surface. Most U11 games will be on grass, but might occasionally be on turf. And then finally, close-fitting player gloves are totally optional, those being like very close-fitting, tight, small gloves. Coming back to the sticks and pockets, again, have to be legal specifically for women's field lacrosse. You can't use box and men's field sticks. Pocket depth is what mostly your officials are going to be looking for. So it's very easy to identify a women's field stick versus a men's field stick based on the depth of the pocket and the width of the sidewall. But what your officials are going to be looking for once they've identified that it is for sure a women's field lacrosse stick is, can I see the ball over the top edge of the sidewall? So in the photo on the left, you can see that that ball is sitting in the pocket and you can see it above the sidewall. Versus the photo on the right, the ball is not visible above the top edge of the sidewall. Officials are going to check for that if there's a stick check requested from the top edge of the stick all the way down to where the ball stop is on the stick. So you have to be able to see the ball along the entire sidewall. And there's a couple of other tests that officials can do and that they are trained on how to do. We no longer are going to check sticks before every single game. Players and coaches are responsible for their equipment to be legal throughout the entire game. So if they have any questions, if they want to get their stick checked voluntarily, they can. But what you really want to do is learn how to pull your shooting strings to make your pocket a little bit tighter if you find that the ball's a little bit loose or it's getting stuck somewhere. Those are all illegal. So you need to make sure that the ball moves freely in all parts of your stick for the entire duration of the game. And just to compare women's field versus that men's field, these are actually sixes photos, but in women's sixes, we still use that women's field stick. And in men's sixes, they use the box of the men's field sticks. They look for their pocket depth to be very different than ours. We have to be able to see the top of the ball over the entire width of the sidewall or the length of the sidewall. And the reason why, if it's important, the physicality in women's lacrosse is by rule different. So to the ball carrier, we can't be as physical. And so the stick is easier to check to make the ball to get rid of the ball, right? The guys are on men's field and men and women playing box lacrosse are a little bit more aggressive on ball. And so they want to have a deeper pocket to maintain possession of the ball. But because we don't want to be as exuberant in our contact, it's easier to check the ball out of a women's field stick. Because of that, the skill level of women's field athletes through the roof. They have learned how to dodge, cradle, do the fanciest types of moves at all levels of play. We've got some very talented U11 players, or we have in the past. And so again, that's where that finesse and that skill really has to be elevated because we're playing with a different stick. In terms of mandatory goalkeeping equipment, if you're a U11 family, you might have a team situation where everyone's taking a turn going through and everyone has to try goalie. If that's the case, then we need to know this. Goalkeepers still, even though they're wearing a helmet that has a dangling throat protector and it has to be a lacrosse helmet, it cannot be a hockey helmet. They have to wear a mouth guard as well. So mouth guard, lacrosse helmet specific for lacrosse, and then a dangling throat protector. If it's a hockey dangling throat protector, that's okay, so long as it's not a hockey helmet. Has to wear a chest protector, has to wear something to protect their heart and their stomach, and need to be wearing padded gloves. The gloves they kind of look like a hockey glove, not a hockey goalie, but a hockey player's glove. And generally speaking, the equipment for goalies in women's lacrosse, there's a 3 centimeter rule. So anywhere off the body, so long as there's no more than 3 centimeters of equipment, or the equipment doesn't come off the body for more than 3 centimeters, it's going to be legal. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So this is actually that photo before of the women's field player, an OWFL alum coming out of Oakville, Annabelle Child, and another Oakville alum, Cassidy Eckert. She's going into her senior. Annabelle's from Harvard. Cass is going into her senior year is in her senior year at Oregon, both playing in the NCAA. But Cass would be wearing a legal helmet with a dangling connected throat guard. They're usually clear. Sometimes some of the hockey ones will be black. That's to protect the gap between the bottom of your helmet and your chest protector. Gloves, any brand would be fine. And if they have this plastic on them, that's fine, so long as it's there as part of the manufacturing process. If you as a parent are like, I'm adding hard plastic to my kids' equipment, that is not legal. They can have to wear a chest protector. So this is an STX one. A lot of the new chest protectors will have like EKG added protection to really protect the heart. And then optional equipment, shin pads. You don't see many of the higher level goalies wearing them, but if you're first year U11, this is your first time using that yellow ball. I'm a former goalie. I have a lot of very permanent bruises on my shins that I'm very proud of, because those are saves. But I also am very aware of the fact that, man, shin pads would have prevented a lot of that. So shin pads, totally legal. And padded pants are totally legal as well. They can be lacrosse specific, or they could be like football padded pants. So long as they all abide by that 3 centimeter rule. When I first started playing, my high school put me in baseball catchers, shin pads that like cover the knee as well. Tough to run in, because this is a very, this is a position where you really can move around the field. That's your choice, but your shins are protected. So long as it's that 3 centimeters, you're good. Some types of equipment that would not be legal for women's field, big triangular sticks sold specifically for box lacrosse, shin pads and chest protectors, excess equipment really not necessary. I do get a lot of questions about goalkeepers wearing hockey shoulder pads or arm protection. It's not necessary. If they want to wear it, and it abides by that 3 centimeters, they can. I personally find it very limiting to be able to throw with a goalie stick if you're wearing all of that extra stuff on your shoulders and your arms, and they're generally in, so they're kind of protected by your stick. But it's, again, totally your choice. We want goalies to have fun and feel safe and protected. All of the rules that we're going to go through tonight, if you're looking for resources, again, a big part of what we're trying to do is no rule is a secret, share resources. Please feel free to visit our website, owfl.org/officials, for tons of digital resources that can help contextualize the game, help you remember stuff that we went over tonight, help you see, all right, my kid's coming into U11, but they just played U9. What's the same? What's different? All of that type of stuff is highlighted at a very high level in this document. This is our OWFL rule summary document. And this year, I've also added a third page that includes all of the specific changes that World Lacrosse added into the rule book. Not really important to know for U11. Most of the rule changes don't really come into play, except for really minor stuff like the color of your mouth guard can now be clear and white, like that type of stuff. But this is always there for you amongst other resources on the website, including the the U11 rule modification document. So specific rules to U11. If this is the rule book, this is how we modify it for U11. And then I do have a common questions from coaches document as well. If you're a coach, this is kind of the only place I could think to put this in the call tonight. A couple of things that I might want to flag for you. timeouts have changed for the better. So now we can do now we can do possession timeouts. So if your team has possession of the ball outside of the advantage like area, you can request a timeout. You still only get 2 timeouts per game, but you can request a live possession ball timeout. And then the other thing that I'll flag is that we are moving to alternate possession. So the throw, when an official would like do a jump ball, basically, and 2 players would try and fight it out in the air for the ball. Those days are dead. We're very grateful for that. It's now going to be alternate possession, just like in basketball. So if there's offsetting fouls and they're equally severe, we'll go to alternate possession. But do check those things out in these documents. So in women's field lacrosse, the ball changes possession through changes of possession or fouls. There are 4 types of fouls. There's offsides, there's goal circle violations, there's minor, and there's major fouls. And there's 4 different categories that each have their own unique penalty administration, severity, all those types of things. Generally speaking, the fouls are going to be served not by going into a penalty box or by going off the field. Generally, most fouls are going to get served right on the field. So if I am fouled and I have the ball, the whistle's going to go. The person who fouled me, if it's a minor foul, will go to the side 4 big steps. If it's a major foul, they'll go 4 meters behind me. And then I can restart play, or the whistle will restart play. And all of those things are kind of dependent on where and when and how. We'll start with our changes of possession. There's some important ones in U11. So the ball is going to change possession immediately after goals. Again, we're going to do draws to start quarters only, whereas in real lacrosse, you would do a draw after every single goal. The goalie in U11 is going to clear the ball after each goal. And when the goalie is fishing the ball out of the net, the attack is going to run up and they have to tag up at the center line. So their foot or their stick must touch the center line before they're allowed to turn around and redefend. You can get some kind of oddly matched U11 games sometimes. So we want teams to be able to possess the ball, to have the opportunity to clear the ball out, to not be playing defense 100% of the time. So that's why we have that redefending, that attacking role. If an attacking player decides to, I'm not going to run to center, I'm not going to tag up, and they just keep playing pressure defense on the goalie or on the person the goalie passes to, then it's a whistle and the ball is going to get moved up to the center line and we're going to start play from there. So the defense gets that ball automatically moved up to the center line for them. There's also going to be a change of possession when somebody steps on the boundary line while they're in possession of the ball, or if a team tries to pass to a teammate and the ball errantly goes out of bounds. That's a change of possession. However, if there is a shot, you're going to hear the officials yell, "Shot." And if shot has been called, then it's actually awesome. Our players are going to try and fight to see who can be closest to the ball, where and when it goes out of bounds. Whoever's closest on a shot, they get rewarded with the ball. So it's really fun to chase those shots to try and maintain possession when you're on attack and defense. Really cool way to try and get a change of possession. If you're coming out of U9, you've been playing with an attempted pass rule. By U11, and hopefully this is made a little bit easier by the yellow ball because it's got a little more, it has more weight to it. But in U11, you have to complete 1 full catch. Once your team has caught a ball in the attacking end of the field, the officials are both going to put 1 finger up in the air, nice and high. And that means that the team in possession of the ball, the attacking team may shoot on goal. Additionally, we have a 5-second rule. I'm going to come back to that 5-second rule in a bit, but just before I move on, again, that completed pass rule for U11, the goalie clear counts, a player passing the ball counts, so long as the ball is caught in the attacking end of the field. So if the attacker who was trying to catch the pass had their feet on the defensive side and their stick was on the offensive side, that doesn't count. Feet have to be over the center line. If it's caught in the attacking end of the field, that is a completed pass. They can make more than 1 completed pass. That's encouraged. If they make 1 completed pass and then drop it and then pick it back up, they keep that pass so long as they have possession of the ball. but that's the completed pass rule. And if you want to see it in more detail, again, it's in that U11 document. But let's look at the 5-second rule. Oh, I have a document about this, my bad. So the other thing I'll add then is that the ball is live off the rebound. So if we have our one pass, attackers are driving to goal, they take a shot, goalie with the big save, but the attack gets it right away off the rebound, they may shoot again immediately. The ball is live off a rebound. And then anytime there's a foul inside the 15-meter marking area, so inside that huge semicircle above the goal line, we are automatically going to grant a pass to the attacking team because we want defense to be playing defense legally. We don't want to be encouraging fouling in this area. So that's our one caught pass rule for U11. Let's look at our 5-second rule. So stick checking, we've kind of alluded to it. It is not legal in U11. So if you can't stick check, and if you can only make body contact or stick to body contact in the advantage flag area, how do you play defense in this game? So what we've come up with as a board is this 5-second rule. So this is a modification specific to the OWFL. We've worked really hard to get this rule to where it is. So I'm very optimistic that, again, another year of implementation here, it's going to be great. But what's going to happen is that we are going to reward good defense with a change of possession. So a defender needs to do these 3 things together for 5 seconds, and we'll give them the ball. They need to be on ball. So when the on ball defender is goal side, meaning the ball is here, the defender is here, and the goal is here. So they're between, the defender is between the goal and the attacker, anywhere around the goal circle, anywhere on the field. But if the on-ball defender is goal side of the ball carrier and within a stick length, they'd be able to reach out and touch the attacker with their stick. And their stick is up for 5 seconds. So it's not horizontal, which we're going to get into. It's not something we want to encourage in our game. Their stick is up the way that this athlete from Burlington, number 45 or 49, has their stick here. If you do that for 5 seconds, that's going to be your ball like that automatically. The official is going to count. So the officials are looking for defense to get into good positioning, and then they will start counting. The count's going to be nice and low down here. So let's say an attacking team has a pass. The official will have one hand up in the air, and then with their other hand, they're going to be counting to 5 low. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If the official says 5, that is whistle. If you still had possession of the ball when the official said 5, that's a turnover to the defensive player, who can self-start, can just keep running. Offsides. So let's get into the 4 rule categories. The first one being restraining line violations. So this is take a look at our U11 field. Again, shared sub box, one big center line. We're playing 4v4 in the attacking and the defending ends. One goalie has to be in the defensive end. So the first way you can go offside is if your goalie decides to step on the center line. That is not permitted. In real lacrosse, the goalie is allowed to move all the way to the far restraining line, but because we have a shared restraining line in U11, the goalie may not step on that center line. The other way to go offside is if a player decides to go offside. So you're going to see maybe some inexperienced players at U11. Let's say this player in yellow right here is Susie. Susie's picking flowers and standing right on the center line. If you're standing on the line, you are offside. And teams are obliged to play with no more than 4 attackers and defenders at the same time. If you have a card for a penalty, you play down in your attacking and your defending ends. And let's say if your team had a whole bunch of injuries and you only had 5 players and a goalie, then you'd only have to hold 1 player behind this line. But that doesn't tend to happen in U11. So we want to avoid these 4 players stepping on or over the center line. As a coach, I like to teach my players, or I did like to teach my players, that you don't want to stand right on the line. So if this is the foot and this is the line, you don't want to hover in this space, because as soon as you get excited to reach your stick over, which is perfectly legal, to go for a loose ball, anything like that, if you step on the line, it's offside. So if you encourage your athletes to stand a foot back, then they've got a little bit of breathing room. They can inch forward if they need to. They can reach still. That's perfectly legal. So that's the offside, no more than 4 and 4 plus the goalie, and you may not cross that center line if you're the 5th and 6th field players. The sub box being shared means that these 4 players can substitute legally while the ball's in the other end. And in transition again, you can enter from one side and exit from the other side. Goal circle violations. So all of those restraining line violations, that's the equivalent of a minor foul. It's just like a technical thing to keep right on the field to keep things fair. So are goal circle violations. So in U11, the goalie has to be the one to clear the ball from the goal circle after a goal. This is mandatory. And they have to clear with an overhand pass. So they can't just pop the ball up. We want to be, as an organization, encouraging our goalies to learn how to play with those big, beautiful butterfly nets that they have, those big sticks. Otherwise, during live play, Rule 17 is the goal circle rule in the rule book, and it's fine. So what that means, and this is new for this year, we're trying to be a little bit more loose in our application of the goal circle rules. So we're going to match the rule book a little bit more. Defense may pick up a loose ball within the goal circle and exit the goal circle with possession of the ball. That is new. In the past, the goalie always had to be the one to clear the ball at U11 because teams weren't teaching their goalies how to clear. So we overcorrected, and now we're kind of at this point where, okay, goalies are actually pretty studly at U11. They got some real skill. So a loose ball, defense are permitted in the goal circle. They are permitted to pick up a loose ball within the goal circle and run out with it. Once the goalie or defender, within the goal circle, has possession of the ball, possession meaning that they've either got the ball in their stick, or if they're the goalie, they might have trapped it underneath their stick. They have 5 seconds to clear the ball from the goal circle. So similar to the 5-second defensive rule, if the goalie has possession, the official is going to do a high chopping motion to count up to 5. And if they say 5 and the goalie's still in the goal circle, their foot is on the line, if the ball's still in their stick, that is a goal circle violation of that 5-second goal circle rule. Otherwise, goalies may only cover or smother or trap the ball with their stick or with their body or use their hand when the ball is inside the goal circle. As soon as the goalie leaves the goal circle, they lose their goaltending privileges. The goalie is considered in the goal circle, so that 5 seconds is still eligible when at least 1 foot is on the line. That could be your heel. So fully off the line means fully out. Partially on the line means you're in. Straddling means you're in the goal circle still. And then something else that we've done in U11, again, because of that one pass rule, that one caught pass rule, is that we've had to make some modifications because of some coaching decisions to not really play within like the spirit of the game. So we have this modification here as well. Once the goalie leaves the goal circle, oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Let's come back to that thought. This is about being played. This is totally separate. So once the goalie leaves the goal circle with the ball, they have to be played before they can return to the goal circle with the ball. So if you want to reset that 5 seconds, you have to reset it by being played. Being played means that you're checked or fouled. Now, you could get fouled if you're the goalie. It doesn't happen very often in U11. You can't get checked, or else that's a foul in U11. Or you could pass to a teammate, receive the ball back, and then roll the ball in or throw the ball in the back of the net and follow the ball in. You can't walk into the goal circle with the ball in your stick. But I don't really think at this point of the game, where you only have possession of the ball for 5 seconds, that there's a ton of scenarios where that's going to be really valuable. And I do think that that'll eventually go away and be a rule change in a future year. You can. So if they were being pressured and they were played, they could roll the ball back in if they've already previously had possession of the ball. But it's very few circumstances in U11 where you'd probably want to rely on that. Now we'll talk about when the goalie can leave the goal circle. So to accommodate decisions that were made by coaches to try and take advantage of the one caught pass rule. Goalies used to get used as a fifth defender, and goalies and defenders would double team the ball if they didn't have one completed pass. Not really in the spirit of the game, because in real lacrosse, that wouldn't happen. Anytime the goalie leaves the goal circle, we're leaving an open goal. Now, that's a decision we want goalies to have to make. So to try and keep with a little bit more athleticism in mind and wanting goalies to be these active participants in the game and not just stuck in their goal circle, this is the modification that we've come up with to try and encourage that athletic play and that decision making. So the rule is when the attacking team has the ball and the goalie decides to leave the goal circle, the attack is automatically granted one pass. It doesn't go away. It stays up there until the attack loses possession. We do that so that the attacking team could automatically shoot the ball on that open net and score. However, there is an exception. If the defensive team, including the goalie, has the ball, so the goalie makes a save, 1, 2, 3, 4, they decide to get out of the goal circle to avoid the 5-second rule. And then let's say they go to pass the ball to a teammate and it gets intercepted by the attack. The goalie is out of the goal circle, but they were the last one, or their team was the last one to possess the ball. That finger is not going up in the air to say that the attacking team has one completed pass. The goalie must return to the goal circle following that turnover. As soon as the attack gets their one completed pass, then that one completed pass hand is going to go back up in the air from the official. But if the goalie or their team threw an interception or threw a ball long and the attack picked it up, we want the goalie to have the opportunity to go back in the net, and it's not immediately an open goal. I quite like this one in practice, having seen it now for a season and a half, I believe. But it allows goalies to make that decision. Ooh, I want that interception. Then they go for it. You know what I mean? And if they miss it, well, they tried. But if they get it, then their team now has possession of the ball, and that attacking one finger would go down anyways. So it's kind of a cool concept. It's not super complicated in practice. Maybe to think about it in writing like this isn't super fun, but that's the goalie leaving the goal circle rule for U11. So we've gone restraining line violations, we have gone goal circle violations. So let's talk common minor fouls. Penalty administration for all minor fouls is that the person who fouled is going to go 4 meters to the side. Here's some common ones that you'll see. You might see the official do this signal, which is for a legal procedure, and that covers things like illegal equipment. So players may not wear jewelry. Please don't let Susie get her ears pierced 6 or 3 weeks before the season. You cannot wear with earrings. You cannot tape your jewelry. The one exception to jewelry being taped is religious jewelry. We have a lot of athletes who might wear leather bands, that type of stuff. It's perfectly legal. There is a rule in the rule book that says, like a wedding band, but that's hopefully not going to be an issue for our U11s. So no jewelry, no taped jewelry, that is a foul. And I ask our officials to nitpick on this in the beginning of the season so that there's no questions. I've been officiating since 2009. That has never changed. So I didn't know really isn't an excuse. No taping jewelry. Draws cannot be illegal. So we're not going to talk a lot about draws tonight. Basically, the sticks go back to back. Their right edge is down and they face their goalkeeper. Players can stand on either side of their stick and they're going to draw up and away at the whistle. But let's say a player moves their stick early or just draws down. Those are all examples of illegal draws. That's a turnover and a minor foul. Illegal substitution, so having too many people on the field, that's an illegal procedure. And then throwing your stick. So you couldn't throw your stick to try and prevent a ball or a shot from going in your net. That's a minor foul. If you were to throw your stick at somebody, that's going to be upgraded to a major foul. We'll get into our major fouls in a little bit. There's 2 minor fouls we've gotten rid of this year. So body ball, where a player is allowed to kick the ball, that's no longer a foul. So that's going to allow for some more I think exciting play. Body balls are now legal. You cannot kick the ball into the goal, but you can kick the ball to a teammate. And then goalie goals. So it used to be that if a goalie scored a goal, it would not count. and it was a foul. That is no longer the case. Now in U11, you have very few instances where the goalie would be allowed to shoot on net. Because most of the time when the goalie has the ball, the attacking team doesn't have that one pass yet. Theoretically, you could pass it back to your goalie, and if they're not allowed to go in the attacking end, but if you already had one completed pass in the attacking end, and then you passed it back to your goalie, and then the goalie shot on goal, that would technically count if it went in the net. It's not something that I'm thinking or hoping we're going to see an awful lot this summer. Hey, include your goalies. I love that. But them technically are allowed to score now. They may not cross the restraining line. Handball. Players may not use their hand to play the ball, to thumb the ball into their stick, anything like that. And withholding the ball. So if you are somebody who maybe used to play lacrosse, you might have been really familiar with, or women's field lacrosse, you might have been familiar with this rule we had called covering. So we were not allowed to cover for a quick second the ball from an opponent when they were trying to also go for that same ground ball. But the rule has been broadened a little bit, I'll say. So now we are using a version of the rule called withholding the ball. So only in instances where somebody is also trying to pick up a ground ball that you are trying to pick up, a player must not trap a loose ball on the ground with their stick longer than is necessary to control it and pick it up in one continuous motion. So in lacrosse, that's referred to as raking. So you might put your stick over the ball for a second to roll it back, to scoop it up. That's always traditionally been illegal in the women's game. You weren't allowed to cover it to rake it back. But now if it's quick and it's in one continuous motion, you don't trap it, hold it there for a second, and then pull it back. That's now permitted. If I was a coach in U11, I would still try and teach my players and encourage my athletes to scoop through the ball. Sometimes you say skirt to the dirt or whatever. But technically now raking is permitted. A player must not also withhold the ball with any part of their body. So if a player was sitting on the ball or like kind of like fell over some sticks and like ended up like butt on the ball, that's they're withholding the ball, they're trapping the ball in the field, and other people can't pick it up. That's a foul. And again, goalies may trap the ball within their goal circle so long as they get it out within 5 seconds. Major fouls. So penalty administration on this is more severe. So the person that commits the foul is required to go 4 meters behind. There's 2 broad subcategories of major fouls in real women's lacrosse. The first being fouls that are oriented around displacement. So contact in U11 in the advantage flag area, in that big blue semicircle area, is legal. So that teams can try and learn how to play defense effectively, because contact is a part of the women's field lacrosse game. But displacement is not. Displacement is a foul. So contact is 50-50, that's good. But as soon as somebody is 60-40 or 70-30 or 90-10 or 100-0, those are all instances of displacement, and those are fouls. Officials are looking for who made the initial contact, who caused and forced the displacement. So 2 people kind of going back and forth a little bit, probably going to be no foul or hopefully no call. But as soon as somebody takes that extra little push, that step, that shove, they're the one causing the displacement. That's going to be their foul. And again, defensive contact, stick to body or body to body. So like forearms to arm, that's only permitted inside the advantage flag area. Other side of this is that fouls oriented around unsafe checking. So those would be our dangerous check fouls. Those are also going to get called. So because there's no stick checking in U11, I'm not going to get bogged down in those here. Empty stick checking and held stick checks, where you go to check somebody and you hold their stick down instead of getting it up right away. Those are generally minor fouls, but in U11, we're going to consider them major because they're checked sticks. So all checking is a major foul in U11. If you have a kid who's playing U13 or above, there is a change to the empty stick check rule this year that empty stick checks are technically no longer a foul if they're on the ground, only if you're trying to receive a pass from the air. You can't bat somebody's stick out of the way. But for U11 specifically, empties are still a foul because they are a stick check. The other modification that we have for U11 is actually U9 right through U15. This is the modification that we have maintained through the most of our levels. And this is that no horizontal stick to body contact is permitted at any time, period. I encourage my officials, as soon as they see a horizontal stick, to get in the habit of making this an automatic call. You see it, you call it. We don't want the athletes to be getting 5 weeks into the season and going, well, no one ever calls it. We're really trying to do better than that. The intent of this modification is to eliminate the middle of the player's shaft, a defender's shaft, from making contact with the ball carrier's arm either once or multiple times. You'll see sometimes in other disciplines. I mean, I know this is a GIF, so it's on loop, but can you imagine somebody hitting you like that with a stick? It hurts. So that's a major foul. We want defenders to play with their sticks up. So what does that look like? We use 30 degrees as the marker. Now, how that gets trained is that really what we're looking for is 45 and up, and anything 30 to 45, this like kind of half, I'm not really sure what degree that is. My math isn't very good. The officials should be telling these kids, get your stick up. 17, stick up. Blue, get your stick up. Watch the horizontal. Like, we want them to be getting their sticks up. So coaches, please encourage your athletes to get their sticks up so that we're not teaching defense to be horizontal. It is a crutch. Anything under 30 degrees must be an immediate whistle. 30 degrees to 45, that's where we're trying to encourage them to get their sticks up higher a little bit. And then anything 45 and up, it doesn't have to be, arms out, elbows wide, hugging a tree. I think our athletes at U11 are beyond that athletically for the most part. But how you teach it, that's up to you. It's always fun trying to teach 10-year-olds how to play defense. But we will try and encourage them. We hope coaches also encourage them to get their sticks up. So some real life examples. This defender, if this was inside the advantage flag area, this would be perfectly legal. This is 30 degrees. This is well above that. This is great defense. Whereas if I'm the official and this defender in white had their stick in this space, I'm thinking, okay, I think that's about 30, 28 up there. Stick up, stick up, stick up, stick up. We want you to get your stick up. So we're not really sure about this one. And then if that stick is horizontal or lower than horizontal, the stick head is below the butt of the stick. That is a automatic inside, outside, the advantage flag area. It doesn't matter. We want this getting called all the time to try and discourage that type of defense. And again, legal body to body, meaning my forearms or my palm, my knuckles, my fingers, my forearm are in contact with the attacker, or yeah, those two. That's generally how it's going to go. That is legal only within this space. Two of the most common fouls. The first one, this is available at all levels of the game. So U9 through Jewel, World Championships, shooting space is maybe the women's lacrosse foul. This is the one that people are like, you guys are the ones with that weird shooting rule. Yes, we are. And this is that rule. This is a safety rule. And basically the gist of shooting space is that defensive players can't block up the space in front of the ball. That's 3 seconds. That's shooting space. So long as the attackers then don't launch the ball into that space. We don't want attackers trying to shoot through people. And so shooting space is when a defensive player is blocking up the lane between the shooter and the goal illegally. So shooting space is in effect only when the attacking team has possession of the ball within, and this should say the 15-meter marking area. A defender must not block or guard the goal for the purpose of obstructing the lane between the shooter and the edges of the goal circle. Obstructing that shooting space lane denies the attacking team the opportunity to shoot safely. A defender is never in shooting space if they are legally marking an opponent within a stick length. So if I have my stick out because I'm taking this cutter through the fan and I am within a stick length of that cutter, I should not be getting called in shooting space. Alternatively, if I'm playing defense below the goal line extended, I should not be called in shooting space. This is what that looks like in practice. So each of the yellow dots represent a ball, being, somebody has an opportunity to shoot. They're looking to shoot from these spaces. It's the ball to the edges of the goal circle, not to the goalie, not just to the net. It's to the edge of the goal circle. So it's a pretty broad lane, particularly somebody who steps inside the 15. I said this on the U9 call the other night. Your U11 should not be shooting from 15 meters. I promise you they will not score. Encourage them to drive to goal. Encourage them to get inside the fan if they can, to take high quality shots with nobody in their shooting lane, and encourage them to pump. If they see somebody in their lane and they want the official to identify that person is in my way, have them learn how to pump the ball. It's a big cradle. You're almost shooting, but you're pulling the ball back at the last second. Throw a pump fake. Throw off the goalkeeper. Show the official that there is somebody in your shooting lane. So any player standing within this lane of this ball, not within a stick length of an attacker, that person is in shooting space. Let's look at a real world example of this. So this is from the 2021 World Championship in Towson, Maryland. This is a Team USA attacker. I believe that's Taylor Cummings. Absolutely could shoot from here, well within 11 meters from goal. And this Team Canada defender is absolutely in the shooting lane being defined by the edges of the goal circle, not within a stick length of their nearest defender, of their nearest attacker. This defender is split between the two open players, to their one to the left and one to the right. So this player absolutely in shooting space. Another example, this player 24 for Canada steps on in they're inside the 15 meter for sure. They're actually just stepped on the 11 meter marking area or on the fan line. And this defender, you can see the length of their stick. Nobody is within that distance here. They are blocking the shooting lane. This gets called shooting space. So that is the shooting space rule. Like all of the other rules we've gone to, if you want more information about these rules or you want to see real life examples of them, if this slide deck has this video logo in the corner, check out the notes. There's videos of all of these fouls in the notes. They're linked to our YouTube channel, OWFL Officiating, and all of these videos are there to provide you with some real world examples of what this looks like. Because shooting space is an immediate whistle, so the official can't flag it, they can't put a held penalty on it, it has to be called right away. There's an exception to this rule. So for coaches, we want you to teach your goalkeepers to play to the save, not to the whistle. And this is what I mean by that. If the whistle is blown for shooting space, and only a shooting space violation, between the moment the shot has been released and a goal is scored, the goal is going to count. So what that looks like is shooter shoots, whistle goes, ball goes in the net. That's a goal. Only on a shooting space violation. Alternatively, if the goalie makes the save, so shooter shoots, whistle is blown for shooting space, ball goes in the goal, ball is saved by the goalie or hits the post, the play is going to restart with the goalie in the goal circle. We're going to reward the defensive stop. The third thing that could potentially happen in that scenario is the ball might miss the net. So in that situation, shooter shoots, whistle goes for a shooting space violation, ball misses the net completely, goalie doesn't save it, doesn't touch the goalkeeper. In that situation, we're going to give the attacker who shot a free position on the nearest hash mark. And then the other really common foul, I've kind of been alluding to it all night, that's specific to women's field lacrosse is 3 seconds. It's kind of hand in hand with shooting space. It takes effect when the attacking team crosses the ball over the restraining line. So in U11, basically athletes are almost always eligible for 3 seconds. And the rule goes, a defender must not remain in the 11-meter fan for more than 3 seconds unless they are marking an opponent within a stick length. So exactly like 3 in the key, you have to be in basketball actively guarding. Here, you have to be within a stick and a cross length. You should be able to touch your nearest defender with your stick. A defender who is marking an unmarked opponent standing directly behind the goal is exempt from 3 seconds. So usually they'd be like, I've got behind, but they're not exempt from shooting space. So if we look at this example, if this player was defending an attacker behind the net, they are not in 3 seconds, but this shooter wants to shoot, they're absolutely in shooting space. And if we think of 3 seconds in relation to this example, ignore the lines. Yes, we know they're in shooting space, but how long have they been standing in this space, right? So are they outside of a stick length of somebody? Yes. And once the ball crossed the restraint line, which happened way back there, have they been inside the fan for more than 3 seconds? Likely. Cards. We are coming to the near the end here, so thank you for sticking with us through the presentation. Cards are in play at all levels. There are 2 cards used in women's field lacrosse. There's a yellow card. This is a 2-minute violation. If you are given a yellow card, you're going to go off the field to serve your penalty for 2 minutes. And all of these card fouls are non-releasable. So you may not come on early at 30 seconds into a card if your team gets scored against. A yellow card is awarded to somebody for their first infraction. If somebody has a second yellow card, they are ejected from the game. We show ejections by using a red card. So you'll see a yellow red together. And that means that their team is going to be down for 5 minutes. And at the end of that 5 minutes, that player is not permitted to come back on the field. They're expelled from the game. For really serious infractions, that's when players are shown a red card. That's a 10-minute violation. The team is going to play down for 10 minutes, and the player who received that card is not permitted to return to the game. Teams, again, must play down for the entire duration of the card. They're non-releasable. There's 4 mandatory cards, so officials don't have a choice. If they see it, they must award a card. Those are for checks to the head, for swipes, which are big, uncontrolled stick checks, slashing in sixes or in men's field. That's kind of what a swipe is for us. Except for us, it doesn't have to make contact. If it's really dangerous, it's a swipe. It needs to be called. Dangerous follow through, which is I'm shooting or passing and my stick makes contact with somebody, not necessarily an opponent, but I have no regard for the people around me and I follow through and smack somebody with my stick. That's a dangerous follow through. And a dangerous propel. So if someone's in the shooting lane and I, as the shooter, say, screw it, and I launch the ball through people, into people, around people, that is a dangerous propel. It's the official's judgment, but it doesn't have to make contact to be a foul. There's also discretionary cards. So we can upgrade dangerous major fouls. If there's repeatedly common major fouls, like over and over and over again, we can card. And also for misconduct, so unfair or unsportsmanlike play. And then new in the OWFL this year, you will also see officials carrying a purple card. This is all going to be outlined over the next couple of weeks as we get into May. We're going to be launching our Stay On Side campaign. So if you want to take a better look at that, please feel free to check out this link here. But purple cards are for spectator behavior. We have increasingly seen some really uncool things happening on sidelines. We want officials to be focused on field. And again, these are kids, so let's keep the game as fun as possible. If an official identifies some poor spectator behavior, these don't have to happen sequentially. They can pick and choose as they feel is right. But the official could stop the clock and decide to say, this is a warning, please stop what you're doing or saying on the sidelines. Or they could turn and award a purple card. The policy outlines all of these in more detail in terms of, severity and what warrants this and what warrants that. The purple card is going to penalize that spectator's team for 2 minutes and should be a warning to everybody. This behavior needs to stop. The purple and the red card, just like with the yellow and the red or the straight red card, is an ejection. We're asking that spectator to leave, and we're asking that spectator to leave for the rest of the day. The team will also be penalized for 2 minutes. We appreciate coaches are going to be a huge part of this. They're going to be assisting your 14-year-old officials in trying to manage this. We ask that people come to the field to be respectful. My hope is that we never have to use this card. This is something that we're trying to do to implement reasonable, measurable ways to apply respect and sport rules that we've always had as an OWFL board, that what we've always felt challenging to actually implement. We don't want to go looking for this stuff. Again, hopefully nobody has to use a purple card all season. That would be wonderful. But this is to try and keep the game fair and fun and safe, and to keep officials returning every year, and to keep athletes having a positive time on the field. The final thing that I want to go through is self-start. So we've talked a lot tonight about penalty administration. Generally speaking, there's going to be instances where you're like, oh, the kid got fouled and they just started running right away. And that is self-start. So when a player is fouled outside of the advantage flag area, generally speaking, they can self-start, restarting play on their own without a subsequent whistle. So a foul is identified or there was a change of possession. Usually there's going to be a whistle with that. But then if it's outside the advantage flag area, we want players to restart quickly, so they don't have to wait for a second whistle to restart play. Instances where players may not self-start include if the stop is clocked if the clock is stopped because of a timeout, then they can't restart. They have to wait for the official to restart. If there's an illegal draw, because usually the ball has gone far, so we need to bring it back. If there's an offside, because we need to correct the offside before they start playing again. And any foul occurring in the advantage flag area, because we have to administer the penalty from a specific spot, be it the nearest dot, be it the nearest hash mark, be it the top center of the 15. That's where we set up all offsides in that area. Because they all have to be administered specifically, that's why you can't self-start inside the advantage flag area. All boundary balls, the entire game, even in the last 30 seconds of a U11 quarter, when it's stop time, and the clock is stopping on every whistle, players may still self-start. And new this year, they don't have to self-start from the dot. So if the ball went out directly behind the goal circle, that player can pick the ball up, come on the field, stand, and run. You may not run from out of bounds, inbounds. You do have to stand before you go so that you don't gain an unfair advantage. But again, in stop time, players may self-start, and if the ball went out between the dots, they can just come right on the field and self-start from there. So that's it for tonight. Our learning outcomes were that we were looking to provide a brief overview of the game of women's field lacrosse and our history, to provide a brief overview of the OWFL and our programs. We were looking to introduce U11, including modifications that are specific to this level of play. And we wanted to build avenues for positive spectator engagement in an environment for athletes and officials that is fun, makes them want to return. And finally, I hope that tonight helped foster an appreciation for this phenomenal game. My only request is that we did not cover every foul. We did not cover every concept in the game. We did not cover every exception. So as a rule with my officials, I tell them that they should never start sentences with Hannah says, or Hannah said, without being absolutely sure that I said it. Know that I'm a student of the game too. I make mistakes. I love talking about the rules. So if you're interested or if you have more questions, please contact me. It's owflofficiating@gmail.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. I wish you all the best going into the 2025 season. If you're an athlete, a parent, a coach, a spectator, please enjoy this beautiful game. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the field. So thank you so much.